Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic. I have the pleasure of introducing the young lady to the left of me. And I will say as a preamble, whilst we've acknowledged that corruption is truly global in nature, it seems that we are still defining corruption within a very narrow boundary. And we may leave people with the tacit assumption that corruption is what happens in Africa and Latin America and maybe Asia. But when the richest nation on the earth has 3 million of its own citizens in prison, privately owned for-profit prison, there is corruption. When Iraq is bombed on a bunch of lies, and then defense contractors make hundreds of billions of pounds rebuilding the country they have just destroyed, there is unfathomable corruption. When bankers are bailed out to the tune of hundreds of billions of pounds in the UK for mismanaging their so-called free market businesses and the national economy, and they get to keep their jobs and continue making billions of pounds, there is unfathomable corruption. Where there is corporate tax avoidance, there is corruption. When the rich, now developed countries impose upon the poorer countries of the world economic policies they themselves did not use to develop, there is corruption. But most importantly, I want to come back to the final part, foreign intervention. There is corruption. Why is this relevant to the young lady I'm going to introduce beside me? Because the young lady beside me, Bibi La Luz Gonzalez, La Luz means the light, is from a country called Guatemala. For those who don't know the history of Guatemala, in 1954, like many other Latin American countries and countries across the world before and since, Guatemala made the sin of offending international big business and saying to the United Fruit Company, well, we actually don't want you to own our country anymore. And there was a United States-backed coup in Guatemala. There's been a coup in many other countries in South America and across the world. And this is one of the challenges, if we're going to talk about corruption, we have to be honest, that the poorer countries also face the reality of outside pressures to allow their economies to be destroyed. Bibi's father actually wrote a book about this particular subject, called Osasuna Transparencia. My Spanish is obviously very, very bad. So this is important. So Bibi herself, someone who specialized in political economics, as a political economist by background, wanted to go into government herself, wanted to follow her father and become a diplomat, but frustrated with the way government really works, decided not to. And instead, has currently founded a non-for-profit organization called Eat Better Waik, which means healthy food. It means having healthier food in Kichi, which is a Mayan language. And what her organization essentially does is educate young people and their parents about healthy access to food and about ways in which they can think about what they take into their body and become more conscious. Why is this important? Because in countries like Guatemala, one of the legacies of the things that I've spoke about is that many, many poor people across the globe do not have access to land. Because companies, not always companies that are within their nation, own the masses of the land in those countries. So it's very, very important that we address this issue. Bibi is going to talk to you about the social cost of corruption. One more time for Bibi La Luz Gonzalez, please, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Buenas tardes a todos los que hablan español. Bien. Good afternoon, everyone. Corruption and cynicism has left Guatemalans adrift. The social cost of corruption amounts to almost 3 million children left without school lunches and supplies, 1 million food bags undelivered to undernourished areas in the country, more than 1 million children lacking sufficient nutrients to develop without vaccination, and at least 500,000 women without proper care at childbirth. More than half of Guatemalan's population, its 16 million inhabitants, live in poverty and ranks first in undernourishment rates in the region. Inequality gaps are widening, while 30% of the national budget is vulnerable to corruption. 80% of rural areas are affected by food insecurity, unemployment, extreme weather conditions, stuck in a nutrition-based trap, and under miserable healthcare conditions, if any. Moreover, government aid is weak in reaching the people most in need and inadequately handles food aid and crop production incentives. Instead, allocated budget has been embezzled in private favors and individual gain. And this was revealed by the UN's International Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala, CICIG, and the Public Ministry. The president and vice president were forced to resign amid public lobbying after irrefutable evidence of them defrauding the country of approximately $65 million. 2015 was a historic year for Guatemala, when youth led 5 months of massive peaceful demonstrations of up to 100,000 people protesting against high-ranking officials of mounting corruption. We were fed up with such abuse of power. We're not fools. An awakened society through social media put itself together from a torn and violent past to protest without civil unrest. This united population, historically divided, we all finally sang together, loudly and proudly, our national anthem, demanding the resignation of government officials, demanding justice, reforms, and end of corruption. So, every corruption discovery sparked another surge of demonstrations and saw how an elected government fell apart. We woke up one glorious morning without a president. That was good. He had finally resigned and was then imprisoned, just like his vice president. Steps have initiated to lift the country out of impunity. However, other government branches need to follow as a way to eliminate a corrupt system that has been corroding our country. I am extremely happy I am part of this moment, writing academic articles, speaking up to international media. I've jointly developed a civic involvement project. I am part of groups that rallied people to take part of the protests, and even more so, being here in front of you. However, corruption has left the country with unprecedented health and food crisis. Corruption by our government has led to poor planning and execution of government programs, of development programs as well. There's a general misconception about food and nutrition, which inhibits proper intellectual and physical development of children. This needs to stop. So I have created an organization called Eat Better Waik to fill a void that government has neglected, to teach food awareness. I am tackling core problems in the country, combining education, access to food, budget, and adequate food intake for specific ages. With partnerships, I'm leading a project in an elementary school to supplement students with nutritious meals to overcome its low 17 cents allocated budget for children's meals. I am determined to expand globally and become a social business, to educate and offer healthy products accessible to low-income families. Guatemalans' movement against corruption has been inspirational to other Latin American countries. A critical youth is here to stay. Government stole so much from us. They also stole our fear. We will critically analyze words and action. We have the power of writing, of speaking up, and organizing. Corruption pushed us to be even more engaged. So, what I urge you all to do is to analyze and monitor your government's proposals very, very closely. There, inconsistencies can be spotted. By uniting peacefully, public demands can be enough to disrupt corruption, reduce inequality, and eradicate poverty. Thank you.